The Whitaker estate stood solemnly amidst the suburbs of Boston, like a proud fortress facing the gray October sky. Cold granite walls and frosted glass windows reflected the fiery red sunset, concealing a sorrowful story within. James Whitaker, a white American millionaire with tousled blonde hair streaked with silver, stood in the office on the top floor of the mansion. His deep blue eyes, once alight with ambition, now held a shadow of sorrow as he stared out the window, where the city undulated beneath a thin layer of mist. A glass of whiskey remained untouched on the walnut desk, as if he no longer found comfort in what once soothed him. 5 years ago, Emily, James's beloved wife, had left him forever in a mysterious car accident. Her death not only robbed him of the love of his life, but left behind a wound that would never heal in James's heart. Ethan, their 8-year-old son, was the only thing tethering him to this world. But Ethan was not healthy. The boy suffered from cystic fibrosis, a chronic illness that left his lungs fragile, prone to infection, and constantly struggling to breathe. Every cough from Ethan was a painful reminder that James could lose the last person he loved at any moment. James had transformed the mansion into an impenetrable fortress. Modern surveillance cameras were installed in every corner, from the marble-tiled hallways to Ethan's bedroom, recording every moment. He checked the monitors each night, a ritual to ease his fear. But the cameras could not fill the void in his heart or replace the presence of a mother Ethan so desperately missed. Over the past year, James had gone through 5 nannies, each dismissed for trivial reasons. A look that lacked sincerity, a misstep in the medication schedule, or simply because he couldn't trust them. Ethan needed someone who cared for his health and could bring light into his small, limited world. A soft knock at the door pulled James from his thoughts. Clara, his assistant of 12 years, stepped in with a discreet smile. The silver-haired, middle-aged woman always maintained a professional demeanor, but today, James detected a flicker of concern in her eyes. Clara understood everything he was going through: the grief of losing Emily, the burden of caring for Ethan, and the self-imposed isolation James had chosen. A black folder containing information on the new nanny applicants was in her hands. Clara told Mr. Whitaker that these were the candidate files, her voice steady but laced with quiet concern. 12 in total, all with experience caring for children with chronic illnesses. I've thoroughly vetted their backgrounds. James swiveled his chair to face her, eyes glancing over the folder. Is there anything special this time? He asked, his voice deep but cold, as if he had become numb to disappointment. Clara placed the folder on the desk and opened the first page. There's one candidate who stands out, sir. Olivia Thompson, 32 years old, is an African American and was formerly a pediatric nurse at Boston Children's Hospital. She has 6 years of experience caring for children with cystic fibrosis, including her younger sister, who passed away 2 years ago. References from former families are outstanding. She also volunteered at a marine conservation center, which might align with Ethan's interests. James furrowed his brow, flipping through Olivia's file. Her photo appeared. A woman with natural curly hair, warm brown eyes, and an oddly sincere smile. Something about her made him pause, though he couldn't quite name it. Perhaps it was her unpretentious yet resolute gaze, as if she had faced loss and still chose to stand tall. Still, James was not one to trust easily. He had seen too many perfect resumes on paper, only to discover unacceptable flaws in real-life work. James said to schedule interviews with the top 3 candidates, including Miss Thompson, closing the file. Starting tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Clara nodded, but before leaving, she paused at the door. Sir, Dr. Reynolds called. He's concerned that the frequent change of nannies might affect Ethan's mental well-being. The boy needs stability, especially given his current health condition. James clenched his fists, a muscle twitching in his jaw. I pay Dr. Reynolds to treat my son's illness, not to lecture me on how to raise him, he replied, his voice as cold as the wind outside. Clara understood the cue and quietly left the room, leaving James with heavy thoughts. James opened a drawer in his office and took out a small photo frame. Emily smiled in the picture, her brown hair glowing in the sunlight, her blue eyes sparkling like Ethan's. The photo was taken during their last beach trip when Ethan was just 3 years old, still healthy and carefree. James gently touched the frame, as if trying to bring Emily back. "I'm trying, Em," he whispered, his voice breaking. But with each passing day, he felt himself drifting farther from her smile and Ethan's. Ethan's familiar cough echoed from downstairs, pulling James from his memories. He rose and quickly descended the marble staircase, heart pounding. Ethan was curled under his favorite blanket in the living room, watching a documentary about the ocean. The boy looked up when he saw his father, offering a faint smile that twisted James's heart. Ethan looked so much like Emily, from his curly blonde hair to the freckles scattered across his nose. "Dad, will you have dinner with me tonight?" Ethan asked, his voice raspy from the coughing. James hesitated, recalling his scheduled video call with investors in Tokyo. But the hopeful look in Ethan's eyes made him change his mind. "All right, son. We'll order your favorite pizza," he said, forcing a smile. Ethan's eyes lit up, though another cough racked his small body. Mrs. Harris, the temporary nanny, quickly fetched the nebulizer to help him breathe more easily. James stood there, helpless, that all-too-familiar sense of anxiety rising again. Once Ethan was stable, James returned to his office and turned on the surveillance screen. The image of Ethan lying on the sofa, clutching his blanket, came into view in high resolution. He checked each camera, making sure everything was secure. But deep down, James knew that cameras couldn't protect Ethan from the disease, nor could they fill the emptiness Emily had left behind. Tomorrow, he would meet Olivia Thompson, and though he didn't want to admit it, he hoped she might bring something different. Not a miracle. James didn't believe in miracles, but a glimmer of light, just enough to spark hope in this house engulfed by shadows. The following morning, the pale October sunlight filtered through the large glass windows of the Whitaker Enterprises conference room, where James Whitaker awaited the nanny candidates. The modern space, with its long glass table and black leather chairs, exuded a cold formality, mirroring James's cautious nature. He sat at the head of the table, his gray suit impeccably pressed, his piercing blue eyes scanning the files of the 3 selected applicants. Among them, Olivia Thompson was the first to be called in. James had thoroughly reviewed her file the night before, former pediatric nurse with 6 years of experience caring for children with cystic fibrosis, including her sister. But a perfect resume wasn't enough to earn his trust. He needed to see for himself whether she was genuinely different. The conference room door opened, and Olivia Thompson walked in. The 32-year-old woman, with natural curls neatly tied back, wore a simple yet elegant navy blue dress. Her brown eyes shone with determination, and the gentle smile on her lips seemed less like an attempt to impress and more like a quiet expression of confidence. James observed every detail. The way she stood upright, her shoulders relaxed, but not careless. The way she deliberately set her small handbag down. And most of all, she met his eyes without flinching. He had interviewed many candidates, but few exuded warmth and strength in such balance. "Good morning, Ms. Thompson." James spoke, his voice low and controlled. "Please, have a seat. Your resume is impressive. 6 years of caring for children with cystic fibrosis, a degree in pediatric nursing, and letters of recommendation from 3 prominent families. It's almost too perfect." Olivia sat down, her hands gently folded on the table. "Thank you, Mr. Whitaker, but I don't believe in perfection," she replied, her voice steady but clear. Caring for sick children isn't about painting a flawless picture. It's about being there, even in chaos, and doing everything possible to bring light into it. I don't promise miracles. I'll give my whole heart. Her words gave James pause. He was used to candidates boasting about their skills or experience. But Olivia didn't do that. She was direct, which intrigued him, though it also made him wary. You cared for your sister, correct? He asked, flipping to a page in her file. Maya, diagnosed with cystic fibrosis, passed away 2 years ago. That must have affected you. How do I know your grief won't interfere with your work? Olivia took a deep breath. Her eyes briefly clouded with sadness, but her voice remained steady. Maya is the reason I became a nurse, she said. I was 18 when she was diagnosed, and from then on, I learned to care for her through every cough and every hospital stay. When she passed, I lost a part of myself, but I also knew that love doesn't end with loss. It taught me patience, empathy, and most importantly, never to give up. I bring that experience into my work, not as a burden, but as motivation. James leaned forward, chin resting on his hand, searching for a crack in her words. But Olivia didn't avoid his gaze. Her sincerity made him uneasy. He wasn't used to being challenged by honesty like that. This job requires more than skill, he said, his voice lowering. My son Ethan needs stability. He lost his mother, and his health is fragile. You'll be closely monitored, not just by me, but by the surveillance system throughout the house. Many find that too overwhelming. Olivia offered a small, unshaken smile. I understand you want to protect Ethan, Mr. Whitaker. If I were a father, I'd do the same. But trust is built through action, not through cameras. I don't mind being watched, as long as I can do what's best for Ethan. Her answer left James silent for a few seconds. He had never met a candidate who spoke so directly about trust. Standing in the corner of the room, taking notes, Clara exchanged a discreet glance with Olivia, as if silently applauding her courage. James gave a brief nod and motioned for Clara to record it. You volunteered at a marine conservation center, and he shifted the topic. Tell me about that. Olivia's eyes lit up, her voice becoming more animated. I worked at the Cape Cod Marine Conservation Center for 3 summers. We rescued sea turtles caught in nets, cared for them, and released them back into the ocean. Once, I stayed overnight to help a loggerhead turtle recover. When it finally swam away, I felt like I'd returned something to its rightful place. Ethan likes the ocean, doesn't he? He might enjoy stories like that. James nodded, remembering Ethan's passion for ocean documentaries. Olivia seemed to have grasped that just from reading the file, which surprised him. The interview continued for another 10 minutes, with Olivia answering all of James's questions with clarity and sincerity. She spoke about the 5 senses countdown technique she used to help Maya through panic attacks, and how she turned breathing exercises into games to make sick children feel more comfortable. When she finally left the room, James was left with an unfamiliar feeling, not exactly trust, but a spark of hope that she might be the right one. Clara closed the door behind Olivia and turned to James. She's different, sir, she said gently. I've never seen anyone make you stop and think like that. James didn't respond. He reopened Olivia's file and stared at her photograph. He said he would call in the following 2 candidates. But in his mind, the decision was already made. Olivia Thompson would be given a trial, not because her resume was perfect, but because something in her eyes reminded him of something he'd long forgotten: vitality, the very thing he and Ethan had been missing. That evening, James sat beside Ethan in the living room, where the boy watched a documentary about humpback whales. Ethan, with his curly blonde hair and mother's blue eyes, looked up. Dad, is the new nanny like Mom? He asked, his voice raspy. James froze, unsure how to answer. He said we'd meet her tomorrow morning, son, brushing Ethan's hair. Let's see what you think. Ethan nodded, but his eyes held a glimmer of hope. James looked at his son, then out the window, where the pale moonlight bathed the quiet garden. For the first time in years, he wondered if this house could become a true home again, or if it would remain just a fortress for their grief. The next morning, the gentle October sunlight filtered through the trees in the garden of the Whitaker estate, illuminating the marble hallway that led to Ethan's room. Olivia Thompson arrived precisely at 7 a.m., carrying a simple canvas bag and a small box wrapped in sea blue paper. Clara, James's assistant, greeted her in the foyer, a subtle curiosity glinting in her eyes. Ms. Thompson, Mr. Whitaker is in a virtual meeting, but I'll take you to Ethan's room, Clara said, leading Olivia up the stairs. He's been looking forward to meeting you since last night. Olivia nodded, a gentle smile on her lips. She had prepared thoroughly for her first day, not just with Ethan's medication list and health schedule, but also with a plan to help him feel comfortable. The file had detailed his cystic fibrosis diagnosis, a condition that caused mucus buildup in the lungs, making breathing difficult and infections frequent. But what caught Olivia's attention most was Ethan's fascination with the ocean. From whales to sea turtles, the boy seemed to find joy in stories of the sea. She hoped that shared interests could be the bridge to their connection. The boy sat on his bed in Ethan's room, his thin legs swinging beneath a blanket printed with whales. A nebulizer beside the bed hummed softly, and a pulse oximeter clipped to his finger displayed stable breathing. When Olivia entered, Ethan looked up, his blue eyes, just like his mother's, shimmering with curiosity. "Are you Miss Olivia?" he asked, his voice hoarse but filled with eagerness. "That's me, Captain Ethan," Olivia replied, kneeling to meet him at eye level. "I've heard you're quite the ocean explorer. Is that true?" Ethan grinned, a rare smile that lit up his pale face. "Do you know about humpback whales?" "They sing," he said, pointing at the TV screen playing an ocean documentary. Olivia nodded and opened the sea blue paper box. "I do, and I brought a gift to start our expedition." She revealed a carved wooden sea turtle, a loggerhead, finely detailed. "This is a loggerhead turtle, just like the one I helped rescue in Cape Cod. Would you like to hear the story?" Ethan's eyes lit up. He took the model, his small fingers tracing the intricate lines. "Did you save a turtle? Tell me," he urged, forgetting the tickle of a rising cough. Olivia sat beside him and recounted a summer night at the Marine Conservation Center, when she and other volunteers worked tirelessly to save a turtle trapped in netting. She described the sound of crashing waves, the salty air, and the moment the turtle swam back into the moonlit ocean. Ethan listened, wide-eyed, as if he were right there with her. Olivia gently wove the story into a breathing exercise, guiding Ethan to inhale deeply and exhale slowly, turning it into a game, breathing like ocean waves. The boy followed along without realizing he was engaging in therapy. Meanwhile, James sat at his computer in his office, half immersed in a virtual meeting with partners in London. But his mind was elsewhere. He opened another window in Ethan's room connected to the camera. The screen showed Olivia and Ethan, his son beaming as he held the turtle model, while Olivia animatedly told her story. James felt a sudden ache in his chest. How long had it been since Ethan smiled like that? And why was it that he, his father, couldn't bring him that joy? Clara entered quietly with a cup of coffee. She said Ms. Thompson had begun, sir, placing the cup on his desk. "Ethan seems to like her." James nodded, eyes fixed on the screen. "She seems to know what she's doing," he replied, voice neutral. "But let's see how long she lasts." Clara hesitated, then continued. Sir, last night Ethan asked if you'd have dinner with him. He mentioned the cheese pizza you used to make with him before Mrs. Emily passed. Her words struck like a blade. James remembered those warm evenings when he and Ethan made pizza together under Emily's guidance. Flour everywhere, laughter echoing through the kitchen. But now, he only saw himself as a failed father, unable to bring joy to his son. I have a meeting with Tokyo tonight, he replied stiffly. Tell Ethan I'll have dinner with him this weekend. Clara nodded, though a flicker of disappointment crossed her eyes. As she left, James returned to the screen. Olivia was adjusting the nebulizer for Ethan, her voice calm yet firm. All right, Captain. Take a deep breath, like you're diving into a coral reef. 1, 2, 3. Ethan followed along, his face visibly more relaxed. James realized that Olivia wasn't just following medical protocols. She was making Ethan feel safe, as Emily once did. During the meeting, an email popped up from Dr. Reynolds, Ethan's attending physician. James opened it and read quickly. Mr. Whitaker, I'm concerned about Ethan's lack of social stimulation. He needs interaction with friends and a positive environment to improve his mental well-being, which is crucial for cystic fibrosis. I strongly recommend considering appropriate activities for him. James frowned and closed the email. He paid the doctor to treat Ethan's illness, not to interfere with how he raised his son. But as he looked back at the screen and saw Ethan laughing with Olivia, turtle model in hand, a seed of doubt took root. Was he protecting Ethan or imprisoning the boy within his fears? He thought of Emily, who always said, "Love is about freedom, not confinement." Olivia, with her sea turtle stories and how she made Ethan laugh, seemed to be bringing back some of that freedom. Olivia sent James a brief email report detailing Ethan's medication doses, breathing exercises, and a note. Ethan loves the ocean. He wants to do a project on whales for his online class. If you approve, I'd be happy to help him prepare. James read the report, his finger pausing at the final line. He didn't reply, but in his heart, he knew Olivia had done something none of the previous nannies could. She had made Ethan feel like a child again, not just a patient. James stood by his office window as night fell, looking out into the darkened garden. The image of Ethan smiling at Olivia lingered in his mind, along with the boy's question, "Is the new nanny like Mom?" James didn't have an answer, but for the first time in years, he felt a flicker of hope, that maybe, just maybe, this house could find light again, even if only a little. Olivia Thompson's third day at the Whitaker estate began in silence, with the dim light of dawn filtering through the large windows. The boy was finishing his morning breathing exercises in Ethan's room, under Olivia's guidance. The nebulizer beside him emitted a soft hum, helping to loosen the mucus in his lungs, an essential part of managing cystic fibrosis. Olivia, her curly hair tied up and wearing a sea blue sweater, turned the exercise into a game. Breathe like you're diving to the bottom of the ocean, Ethan. Now breathe out, like the waves crashing on shore. Though tired, Ethan giggled, his bright blue eyes lighting up as he followed. Afterward, Olivia brought Ethan down to the dining room, where Clara had prepared a breakfast of oatmeal and fruit, suitable for his low-sodium diet. James appeared, dressed sharply in a gray suit, though his eyes revealed the tension within. He had just finished a call with partners, but Olivia's daily report occupied his mind. She noted that Ethan responded well to mentally stimulating activities like ocean-themed storytelling, but also suggested he needed more time in natural environments to improve his mood and overall health. James frowned at that line. Natural environments? For Ethan, even a light breeze could bring infection, Ms. Thompson, James said, sitting across from Olivia and Ethan at the table. Your report mentions taking Ethan outside. Could you elaborate? Olivia set down her spoon and looked James directly in the eye. Mr. Whitaker, I've noticed that Ethan deeply loves nature, especially anything related to the ocean. A few minutes a day in the garden, under the early morning sun, could help him absorb vitamin D and improve his mood. I would control everything: mask, warm clothing, and limited exposure. James gripped his coffee cup tightly, his gaze turning cold. Ms. Thompson, Ethan has cystic fibrosis. Outdoor air carries dust, pollen, and countless bacteria. Do you think I'm going to risk my son's health so that he can feel happy? Olivia didn't flinch, but her voice softened to calm the atmosphere. I understand your concerns, Mr. Whitaker. However, studies show that brief exposure to sunlight and fresh air under controlled conditions can boost the immune system and reduce psychological stress. Ethan doesn't just need medicine. He needs to feel alive, not merely exist. Sitting between them, Ethan looked at Olivia and then turned to James. Dad, I want to see the trees in the garden. Miss Olivia said there's a big oak tree, like in the pirate movies. He coughed lightly, but his eyes gleamed with hope. James felt his chest tighten. He wanted Ethan to be happy, but every suggestion that felt remotely risky brought back memories of Emily. Her smile on their last beach trip before the accident took her away. No, Ethan, he said, his tone firm. The outdoors is too dangerous. Ms. Thompson, I expect you to follow my rules. If you cannot, we can end the contract right now. Olivia took a deep breath, her hands clasped tightly under the table to remain composed. She thought of her sister Maya and the days she fought to bring her joy despite the constraints of illness. Mr. Whitaker, she said, her voice steady, I'm here for Ethan. If you don't want him in the garden, I'll respect that. But I suggest we try something for 1 week. No outdoor exposure, but I'll let natural light into his room through open windows with an air purifier. If there's no improvement, I'll follow your way. James stared at her, surprised by her patience and logic. He wanted to resist, but the hopeful look in Ethan's eyes gave him pause. 1 week, he finally said, voice low. But I want detailed reports every day. And if Ethan shows any adverse symptoms, it stops immediately. Olivia nodded, a faint smile crossing her lips. Thank you. I'll make sure Ethan stays safe. That afternoon, Olivia began the plan. She opened the windows in Ethan's room, placed an air purifier nearby, and brought in a small potted plant for him to care for. Ethan, thrilled by this gardening mission, named the plant Captain Greenbeard. Olivia added a new story about pirates protecting coral reefs, making Ethan laugh endlessly. Clara, passing by, paused to watch the scene, smiling softly. Ms. Thompson, you remind me of Mrs. Emily, she whispered. She always knew how to make Ethan smile. But the joyful moment didn't last. As Olivia was helping Ethan with the nebulizer near the end of the day, he suddenly began coughing violently. A slight trace of blood appeared on his handkerchief, a sign of lung infection or mucosal irritation. Olivia immediately acted, checking his breathing with a stethoscope, increasing the bronchodilator dose, and calling Dr. Reynolds. Ethan, scared, clutched her hand. Miss Olivia, I don't want to go to the hospital, he whispered, his eyes brimming with tears. It's okay, Captain, Olivia said gently, reassuring him. We'll get through this. Breathe with me. Like the waves, remember? She guided him to breathe slowly while monitoring his oxygen levels. Alerted by Clara, James rushed into the room, his face pale. What's happening? He asked, voice trembling. Seeing the blood-stained handkerchief, he nearly lost control. I told you the outdoors was dangerous. What did you do? Olivia, remaining calm, turned to face him. Mr. Whitaker, this is a common symptom of cystic fibrosis. not caused by an open window. I've already called Dr. Reynolds, and Ethan is stabilizing. Right now, you can sit beside him and talk to him. Ethan needs his father. Despite his anger, James recognized the panic in his son's eyes. He sat down and held Ethan's hand. "I'm here, Ethan," he said, his voice softening. "Want me to tell you about a pirate ship?" Ethan nodded faintly, a small smile returning. Olivia continued adjusting the nebulizer. Her eyes met James's momentarily, a silent acknowledgement that they needed to work together. When Dr. Reynolds confirmed by phone that Ethan didn't require hospitalization, James exhaled with relief, though he still looked at Olivia cautiously. That evening, after Ethan had fallen asleep, Olivia sent James a detailed report ending with a note. "Ethan is stable, but needs to feel loved, not just protected. I will continue the natural light experiment unless you request otherwise." James read the report, his hand tightening around the phone. He knew Olivia was right, but the fear of losing Ethan kept him from letting go. Outside, the October wind swept through the garden, conveying that a greater storm was still to come. 1 week after the tense debate over exposing Ethan to nature, the Whitaker estate had found a new rhythm, fragile but present. With patience and professionalism, Olivia Thompson continued her experiment, opening Ethan's window each morning, allowing sunlight and filtered fresh air to enter the room. She also encouraged him to engage in light activities, like painting ocean scenes or caring for the potted plant he had named Captain Greenbeard. Though interrupted by frequent coughing fits, Ethan seemed brighter. His blue eyes sparkled whenever Olivia shared a new story about the sea. This morning, Olivia had a bold idea. She proposed to Clara, James's assistant, to organize a virtual class session so Ethan could reconnect with his schoolmates. "Ethan needs to feel like he's part of the world, not just a patient," Olivia explained as the two sat in the living room, surrounded by stacks of medical files. "He loves the ocean, and I think a small project with his classmates would lift his spirits." Clara, her silver hair neatly tied back, nodded in agreement, a glimmer of admiration in her eyes. "That's an excellent idea, Miss Thompson. Ethan used to love school before his condition worsened. I'll reach out to his teacher." She paused and looked at Olivia with quiet curiosity. "You know, you remind me of Mrs. Emily. She always found ways to make Ethan feel special, even on his worst days." Olivia smiled, though a hint of sadness passed through her. She thought of Maya, her younger sister, and the days she had fought to bring her joy, despite the heaviness of cystic fibrosis. She said softly, "I want Ethan to live like a child, even briefly." The virtual class session was scheduled for that afternoon. Olivia set up a cozy corner in Ethan's room with a computer screen, the wooden sea turtle model, and a whale painting he had made. Wearing a shirt with ocean waves printed on it, Ethan sat nervously in his chair, his small hands clasped tightly. When the screen lit up, his teacher's face appeared, followed by 10 classmates waving and calling his name. "Ethan, are you okay? We missed you," a girl with braided hair shouted joyfully. At first, shy, Ethan slowly broke into a smile. "I'm working on a whale project," he said, his voice hoarse but full of excitement. "Miss Olivia says humpback whales have their songs, like a story." Olivia stood beside him, encouraging him to share, while discreetly monitoring his oxygen levels to ensure his breathing stayed stable. In his office, James received a message from Clara about the class session. He opened his computer and connected it to the camera in Ethan's room. This time, not to monitor, but to watch his son. The image of Ethan beaming as he talked about whales stunned him. How long had it been since he saw his son speak with such energy? He realized Olivia wasn't just taking care of Ethan's health. She was giving the boy a world beyond his illness, something James, for all his protective efforts, had failed to do. During the session, One of Ethan's classmates, Tommy, suggested the class make an ocean-themed video for Ethan. "We'll draw whales and sea turtles, just like you like," Tommy said. Ethan's eyes lit up, and he clapped, but a light cough interrupted him. Olivia immediately brought the nebulizer and calmly guided him. "All right, Captain, take a deep breath now," she said gently. Instead of panicking, the classmates cheered Ethan on through the screen. "You can do it, Ethan," they cried, making him laugh even through the cough. After the class, Ethan was tired but radiant. He hugged Olivia and whispered, "Miss Olivia, I want to make a video for them too. I want to tell them about your turtle." Olivia stroked his hair and nodded. "We will, Captain. Let's rest a bit, okay?" Having witnessed the moment, Clara walked in with a fruit juice tray. "Ms. Thompson, you're truly changing this boy," she said warmly. Then, in a quieter tone, as if sharing a secret, "Mr. James used to be such a fun father, you know? Before Mrs. Emily passed, he used to play pirates with Ethan. The house would echo with laughter. But after, it was like he locked his heart away." Olivia nodded, a hint of sorrow in her eyes. "I understand, Clara. Losing someone you love is a wound that doesn't heal easily. But Ethan needs his father, and I hope he realizes that soon." That evening, Olivia sent James a detailed report and a video clip of the virtual session. In her note, she wrote, "Ethan was thrilled to reconnect with his classmates. Positive morale has noticeably improved his breathing and oxygen levels. I recommend continuing these sessions if you approve." James read the report, pausing on the screen, showing Ethan laughing with his friends. He opened the email from Dr. Reynolds from the previous week, the one reminding him how crucial social stimulation was. This time, instead of dismissing it, James read every word. A creeping sense of guilt stirred inside him. He walked down to Ethan's room, where the boy drew another whale for the project. "Dad, I told my friends about whales today," Ethan exclaimed, pointing to his drawing. James sat down and felt like staying for the first time in months. "You did great, son," he said gently. "Tell me, what's your favorite whale?" Ethan began to explain, his voice hoarse but animated, telling tales of humpback whales and their songs of the sea. James listened, though his gaze shifted momentarily to the doorway, where Olivia stood silently, a soft, knowing smile on her face. He realized she wasn't just a nanny. She was opening a door he had shut long ago. But even as his heart began to stir, the fear of losing Ethan lingered like a shadow, holding him back from stepping fully across that threshold. Outside, the Whitaker garden shimmered under the moonlight, as if waiting for the day this family would walk into the world together, not only with fear, but also with hope. 2 weeks after the virtual class session, the Whitaker estate had begun to breathe a new rhythm, subtle yet undeniable. Olivia Thompson had become an irreplaceable part of Ethan's life, bringing laughter and vitality into his days through stories of the ocean and creative games. She continued to open Ethan's window each morning, using an air purifier for safety. She carefully documented every improvement in his health, from more stable breathing to a noticeably brighter mood. Ethan, still battling the challenges of cystic fibrosis, continued to experience fatigue and coughing fits, but he seemed stronger, at least in spirit. James Whitaker, though still distant, couldn't deny Olivia's impact. Her detailed reports and the moments he witnessed Ethan's radiant laughter made him question whether he had been too rigid. And yet, the fear of losing Ethan and the memory of Emily's death remained an invisible wall, preventing him from opening up completely. He still reviewed Ethan's medical records and daily routines, but now he read Olivia's notes more closely, recognizing that her dedication came from skill and heart. That morning, James asked Olivia to come to his office to organize a few documents related to Whitaker Enterprises' charitable work. He was busy with a virtual meeting and entrusted the task to her, trusting that she was meticulous enough to handle it. Wearing her sea blue sweater and hair tied up neatly, Olivia began her work in the spacious room, lined with walnut bookshelves filled with documents and keepsakes. She carefully sorted the correspondence, but when she pulled out an old folder from a drawer, a small wooden box fell to the floor, scattering a bundle of papers. Olivia bent down to gather them, intending to return them to the box, but a bold title on the top page froze her in place. Investigation Report. The Accident of Mrs. Emily Whitaker, 03/12/2020. Her heart pounded. She knew Emily had died in a car accident, but no one had ever mentioned the details. Curious and a little uneasy, she skimmed through the report. It revealed that the car's brake system had been tampered with, and the suspect was Daniel Harper, former head of security at Whitaker Enterprises, who had vanished after the incident. At the bottom of the page was a handwritten note from James that chilled her. Emily wouldn't have gone alone if I hadn't been in a meeting. This was my fault. Olivia stood still, her hands trembling as she held the file. She hadn't meant to invade James's privacy, but this truth explained everything. His obsession with control, his inability to trust anyone. She was about to return the file when James's footsteps echoed at the door. He stepped in, his face pale, when he saw Olivia holding the documents. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice low and sharp as a blade. Olivia startled, placing the file back on the desk. "Mr. Whitaker, I'm sorry." The box fell, and I was trying to pick it up. "I didn't mean to." "That's enough!" James snapped, striding over and snatching the papers from her. His eyes were bloodshot, as if she'd just betrayed him. "You've crossed the line, Ms. Thompson. I hired you to care for Ethan, not to rummage through my past. Pack your things and leave immediately." Olivia stood tall despite her racing heart. She thought of Ethan, who was preparing for his whale presentation for next week's virtual class, and the mornings he clung to her hand, calling her captain. "Mr. Whitaker," she said firmly, "I'm sorry for stumbling on that file, but I won't leave. Ethan needs me. He has a big presentation coming up, and I promised I'd help him finish it. You can fire me after that, but not now." James stared at her, anger warring with surprise. No nanny had ever dared to stand up to him like this. He wanted to shout, to cast her out in defense of his secret, but the unwavering look in Olivia's eyes gave him pause. "You have no right to bring up Ethan," he said, voice trembling. "You don't understand what I've lost." Olivia took a deep breath. Her gaze was soft but steady. "I do understand the loss, Mr. Whitaker. My sister Maya had cystic fibrosis too. I was by her side through every hospitalization, every coughing fit, until the end. I know what guilt feels like. That terrible feeling you could have done anything to change the outcome. But Ethan is not Maya, and you can't protect him by pushing everyone away." Her words hit James like a blow to the chest. He turned away, gripping the edge of the desk, as memories of Emily flooded back. Her smile, her gentle voice, as she sang Ethan to sleep. He had blamed himself 1,000 times for letting her drive alone that day, for allowing work to overshadow family. And now Olivia, a stranger, was standing before him, speaking truths he had never dared to face. The office door burst open, and Clara entered, visibly worried. "Mr. Whitaker, Ethan just had a severe coughing fit." "Miss Thompson, he's asking for you." Olivia didn't hesitate. She ran out, leaving James with the scattered documents and a heart in turmoil. He could hear Ethan's coughing echoing through the hall, and for the first time, he realized he couldn't control everything. In Ethan's room, Olivia found the boy sitting on the bed, pale, clutching his chest. She quickly retrieved the nebulizer, checked his oxygen levels, and guided him to breathe slowly. "Breathe in, Captain. Like the ocean waves," she said gently. Ethan followed her lead, eyes locked on Olivia's, as if she were his anchor. "Miss Olivia, I'm scared," he whispered. "It's okay. You're courageous," Olivia replied, stroking his hair. "I'm here, and your dad will be here soon too." She glanced toward the door, hoping James would appear. James stood in the hallway, listening to Ethan's coughs and Olivia's soothing voice. He wanted to step inside, but his feet felt rooted to the floor. The investigation file, with its painful scrawl, still haunted him. Olivia had touched his deepest wound, but was also keeping Ethan safe. For the first time, James wondered if the wall he had built was meant to protect Ethan, or to hide from himself. After the tense confrontation in the office, the Whitaker estate sank into an unusual silence, broken only by the occasional dry cough echoing from Ethan's room. Still shaken by James's threat to fire her, Olivia Thompson focused all her energy on caring for Ethan. She adjusted the nebulizer, monitored the oxygen levels clipped to his finger, and gently rubbed his back to ease his breathing. Though exhausted, Ethan clutched Olivia's hand tightly, his blue eyes shimmering with trust. "Miss Olivia, you're not going to leave, right?" he asked, his voice raspy. Olivia smiled and stroked his hair. "Of course not, Captain. I'm here with you, getting ready for our whale presentation." She glanced toward the door, where James stood silently, his eyes conflicted. The argument over the accident report still lingered in the air, but Ethan's health demanded that both set it aside. James stepped into the room and sat beside Ethan's bed. He wanted to say something, but the words caught in his throat. Seeing the worry in his son's eyes, he took a deep breath and forced his voice to stay calm. "How are you feeling, Ethan?" he asked, gently touching the boy's shoulder. "I'm okay, Dad," Ethan replied, though a cough made him curl forward. Olivia quickly brought out her stethoscope, checked his breathing, and jotted down notes in his medical journal. "Oxygen levels are stable," she said, looking at James. "The coughing is typical with cystic fibrosis, but we need to monitor him closely to prevent infection." James nodded, his eyes flicking to the accident report still clutched in his hand. A mix of anger and guilt surged within him, but Olivia's dedication was undeniable. "Thank you, Ms. Thompson," he said in a low voice. "I apologize for losing my temper. You may stay." Olivia nodded, her expression softening. "I understand, Mr. Whitaker. I wasn't trying to intrude. I just wanted to help Ethan." Despite his fatigue, Ethan interjected in a faint voice. "Dad, Miss Olivia tells stories about sea turtles, but I want to hear about Mom. What did she like? Did she like whales like I do?" The question struck James like a blade to the chest. He rarely spoke about Emily, not because he didn't want to, but because every memory carried pain. Olivia looked at James, encouraging him with her eyes. "Mr. Whitaker, Ethan needs to hear about his mother. These stories will help him feel closer to her, especially now." She paused, then added gently, "When my sister Maya was alive, I used to tell her stories to distract her from the pain. It helped more than you'd think." James looked at Ethan and saw the eager hope in his eyes. He took a deep breath, trying to scale the emotional wall he had built since Emily's death. "All right, son," he said, scooting closer. "Your mom loved the ocean, just like you. Once, when you were 3, she took you to the aquarium. You stood before the whale tank, your eyes wide with wonder, and she said you'd grow up to be a seas explorer." Ethan smiled, though a cough broke through it. "Really? Did she tell whale stories too? James nodded, his vision blurring. She told one about a humpback whale tangled in a net, but it still sang, calling its friends for help. She said it was a lesson. Never give up, no matter how hard things get. He paused, his voice cracking. She loved you so much, Ethan, every single day. Olivia quietly adjusted the nebulizer, giving father and son a private moment. She understood that sharing memories of Emily was not only helping Ethan, it was a step toward James's healing. As Ethan drifted to sleep, still clutching his carved sea turtle, Olivia stood to leave. But James called out to her. "Ms. Thompson, could you stay a moment?" Olivia turned back and sat on the chair beside the bed. James looked at her, his eyes no longer cold, but filled with sincerity. "You mentioned your sister," he began, his voice low. "How did you get through that loss?" Olivia inhaled deeply as memories of Maya surfaced. "Maya was my light," she said. "When she passed, I didn't think I'd ever recover. I quit nursing for a while. I couldn't bear hospitals anymore. But I realized that living in grief was the worst way to honor her. She would have wanted me to continue sharing her love with others. That's why I came back. That's why I'm here. For Ethan." James looked at Olivia, seeing her for the first time, not just as a nanny, but as someone who had walked through darkness just like him. "I let Emily go alone that day," he whispered, eyes dropping to the floor. "I had a meeting, and she wanted to attend Ethan's recital. If I'd gone with her, maybe she'd still be alive. Or I may have lost them both." He faltered, his voice breaking. "The report showed someone tampered with the car. Daniel Harper, someone I trusted. I can't forgive myself." Olivia leaned forward, her gaze filled with empathy. "Mr. Whitaker, you can't change the past, but you can change the present. Ethan needs you, not just as a protector, but as a father who shares his love. You did that just now, telling him about Emily. That's the beginning." James looked at his sleeping son, then back at Olivia. "You've done something I couldn't. You made Ethan laugh. You made him feel safe. I don't know if I can do that." Olivia smiled softly. "You don't have to be me. You need to be his dad. That's all Ethan truly needs." She stood, leaving James alone with his thoughts. "I'll be in the next room if Ethan needs anything. Try to rest, Mr. Whitaker." James remained beside Ethan as Olivia left, gently brushing his son's hair. For the first time in years, he felt a sliver of light pierce through the wall of grief he had built. But he also knew that to move forward, he had to face not only the pain of losing Emily, but the fear of letting anyone into his heart again. Outside, the Whitaker garden lay in shadow, but the moonlight shone gently on Ethan's Captain Greenbeard plant, quietly reminding them that light waits patiently to be found, even in the darkest night. 3 weeks after the confrontation over Emily's accident report, the Whitaker estate gradually settled into a new rhythm, still fragile, yet undeniably shifting. Olivia Thompson had become an essential presence in Ethan's life, a caregiver and a companion who brought joy through ocean stories and imaginative games. Though still battling cystic fibrosis, Ethan seemed stronger in spirit, lifted by online classes with his peers and warm moments shared with Olivia. Though maintaining emotional distance, James Whitaker could no longer deny that Olivia was changing Ethan and the home. That morning, Olivia organized an exploration mission in Ethan's room, turning breathing exercises into an undersea treasure hunt. She placed miniature sea animals around the room and guided Ethan to take deep breaths as he dived for the ocean gem, a sparkling blue stone. "Breathe in, Captain, like you're diving into the coral reef," Olivia said with animated energy. Ethan giggled, though a light cough made him pause. Olivia quickly brought over the nebulizer, checked his oxygen levels, and encouraged him in a calm voice. "You're doing great, Ethan. That gem is almost yours." Having just finished a virtual meeting, James came down to check on Ethan. He paused at the door, quietly observing. Olivia, her curly hair tied up and wearing her sea blue sweater, was kneeling beside Ethan, her eyes filled with patience and affection. Ethan, though pale, beamed with joy as he found the blue stone. James felt a tightness in his chest. He remembered Emily, how she used to play with Ethan, turning sick days into adventures. But this time, the memory didn't hurt. Instead, a new feeling crept in, admiration and perhaps, a stirring of something more profound for Olivia. "Mr. Whitaker," Olivia called, noticing him at the door. "Ethan just broke his diving record." "Right, Captain?" She winked at Ethan, who laughed aloud. James entered and sat beside his son. "Well done, son," he said, stroking Ethan's hair. "So tell me, how did Miss Olivia teach you to dive?" Ethan began recounting the tale, his voice hoarse but enthusiastic, describing the ocean gem and how Olivia had turned breathing practice into a game. James listened, occasionally glancing at Olivia, realizing she wasn't just caring for Ethan. She was restoring something he had long lost: joy. That afternoon, Olivia proposed a new idea in her daily report to James: a mini ocean documentary screening in the living room, with Ethan's closest friends joining via video call. "Positive emotions improve Ethan's oxygen levels and breathing," she wrote. This screening would allow him to connect with friends in a safe, uplifting environment. James read the report and nodded in approval. But deep inside, he began to acknowledge that Olivia was more than just a nanny. She was the light gradually illuminating this once shadowed home, perhaps his guarded heart. Ethan suddenly struggled to breathe as he prepared for bed that night. A violent coughing fit left him panicked, his face pale. In the next room, Olivia rushed in with the nebulizer and stethoscope. She sat behind Ethan, holding him close, guiding him through the 5-sense grounding technique she had once used with Maya. "Tell me 3 things you can see, Captain," she said gently. "Just focus on me." Though struggling, Ethan followed. "I see the sea turtle model, the whale painting, and your eyes, Miss Olivia." He continued, listing 2 things he could touch: the blanket and Olivia's hand, and then 1 thing he could smell: the medicine from the nebulizer. Gradually, his breathing stabilized, and the coughing subsided. Olivia checked his oxygen levels and exhaled with relief as everything returned to normal. James, alerted by Clara, rushed into the room, his face drawn with worry. Seeing Olivia holding Ethan, softly guiding him through the episode, he froze, heart pounding. He realized that Olivia wasn't just a skilled nurse. She was the safety Ethan needed, something James, despite all his control, couldn't fully provide. When Ethan calmed, he looked up at Olivia and whispered, "You're like Mom. She used to hold me just like this." Olivia smiled, brushing back his hair. "I'm sure your mom was wonderful, Captain. Now rest. We've got more treasure hunting tomorrow." She tucked the blanket around him, then stood to leave. James called her back. "Ms. Thompson." "Thank you," he said quietly. I don't know what to say. You've done something I couldn't." Olivia looked at him, her eyes warm but cautious. "Mr. Whitaker, Ethan needs both of us. You're his father, and your presence means more than you realize." She paused, then added, "When my sister Maya was very ill, I learned that sometimes just being there is enough to change everything." James nodded, his gaze lingering on Olivia longer than usual. He felt something new rising, gratitude, and a deepening attraction. And yet, he shut it down immediately. Ethan had already lost his mother. James couldn't risk the boy growing attached to someone who might one day leave. "Get some rest," he said, his tone stiffening again. "Ethan has a medical checkup tomorrow." Olivia nodded and exited the room, though her eyes revealed a trace of sadness. She understood James's inner conflict, but she also felt the spark between them, a spark neither of them was ready to confront. James remained at his bedside as Ethan drifted to sleep, watching his son breathe peacefully. He thought of the moment Olivia had cradled Ethan, her voice like a lullaby. For the first time, he wondered if his heart could ever open again, or if fear of loss would forever keep him imprisoned. Out in the hallway, Clara, who had quietly witnessed the exchange, smiled. "She's doing what Mrs. Emily always wanted, bringing people back together," she whispered. Outside, the moonlight cast a soft glow over the Whitaker garden, where Ethan's Captain Greenbeard plant continued to grow, a quiet symbol of the changes silently taking root in this once guarded home. A fierce storm hit Boston on the Tuesday night of November, bringing torrential rain and howling winds that tore through the garden of the Whitaker estate. The window panes rattled under the force of nature, and the atmosphere inside the house grew heavy, mirroring the chaotic emotions inside James Whitaker. After caring for Ethan during last week's panic attack, James had begun to recognize his growing feelings for Olivia Thompson. However, he still grappled with the fear of letting anyone into his heart. With her dedication and patience, Olivia continued caring for Ethan, bringing joy to the boy through games and stories about the ocean. But she also sensed the deliberate distance James maintained. That evening, Olivia was helping Ethan prepare for bed, reading a story about pirate ships braving the storm. Hugging a model sea turtle, Ethan listened with bright eyes, though his cystic fibrosis made his breathing slightly labored. The nebulizer hummed beside him, and Olivia checked the oxygen level on his fingertip to ensure everything was stable. "Miss Olivia, are pirates afraid of storms?" Ethan asked, his voice raspy. Olivia smiled and stroked his hair. "Captain, the best pirates know how to face storms. They don't run. They find a way through because the treasure is always on the other side." She adjusted Ethan's blanket, her eyes briefly filled with concern at the sound of the wind whistling outside. The damp weather could make Ethan's lungs more vulnerable, and she had already prepared the bronchodilators in an emergency. Just finishing an online meeting, James walked down to Ethan's room to check on things. He stopped at the door, watching Olivia as she read, her voice soft like a lullaby. He felt a strange warmth stir in him, but it was quickly replaced by worry as a clap of thunder startled Ethan. "Dad!" the boy cried, eyes searching for James. He entered the room, sat beside the bed, and held his son's hand. "I'm here, Ethan. It's just a storm." But at that moment, Ethan began coughing violently, a respiratory crisis more serious than any before. His face turned pale, his lips slightly bluish, and the oxygen monitor emitted warning beeps. Olivia jumped into action, grabbed the nebulizer, increased the medication dose, and guided Ethan to breathe slowly. "Inhale, Captain, like the waves at sea," she said, her voice calm but urgent. She glanced at James, signaling with her eyes. "Mr. Whitaker, I need you to sit here and hold Ethan. He needs to feel your breathing." James, though panicked, obeyed. He sat on the bed, pulled Ethan into his arms, and let the boy rest against his chest. "Dad's here, son," he whispered, trying to keep his voice steady. "Breathe with me, okay?" Olivia adjusted the nebulizer, checked Ethan's heartbeat with her stethoscope, and quickly noted his vitals. She called Dr. Reynolds on the phone to report the situation. Their heart rate was high, and oxygen saturation dropped to 88%. "I've increased the salbutamol dose, but we need to monitor it closely." Hearing the call, James felt his heart race. "We have to take him to the hospital," he said, his voice shaking, panic in his eyes. The storm outside howled louder, reminding him of the day Emily had her accident in the rain. Olivia placed a steady hand on James's shoulder, her gaze firm. "Mr. Whitaker, moving Ethan in this storm is too risky. His lungs are sensitive, and the weather will worsen his condition. Trust me, we can manage it here." She turned to Ethan, her voice gentle. "Now, Captain, tell me a story. What would your pirate ship do in a storm?" Ethan, struggling to breathe, tried to answer. "It would find the lighthouse," he whispered, clutching the model sea turtle. Olivia smiled and took out a small flashlight, flicking it to mimic a lighthouse beam. "That's right, and we're your lighthouse." Slow breaths now. Still holding Ethan, James began to tell a story he had once heard from Emily. "Once upon a time, there was a pirate ship lost in a storm," he said, voice trembling but trying to stay steady. Its captain, a brave young boy, found the lighthouse and guided the ship safely home. Ethan listened, his breathing slowly synchronizing with James's heartbeat. The oxygen level on the monitor rose to 92%, and Olivia breathed a sigh of relief. When the crisis subsided, Ethan fell asleep in exhaustion, his head resting on James's chest. Olivia double-checked the vitals to ensure he was stable, then sat down in a chair, her eyes meeting James's. "He's okay now, Mr. Whitaker," she said softly. "You did very well." Ethan could feel you, and that helped calm him down. James looked at Olivia, his eyes filled with gratitude and inner conflict. He held her hand briefly, feeling her warmth amid the storm's chill. "Miss Thompson." "Olivia," he corrected himself, his voice low. "Thank you. I don't know what would have happened if you weren't here." Olivia smiled, but gently withdrew her hand to maintain professional boundaries. "I'm here for Ethan, sir. But you're his father. Your presence matters more than any medication." She paused, then added, "When Maya, my sister, had respiratory crises, I used to tell stories to distract her. But sometimes, just holding her made her feel safe." James nodded, looking at Ethan sleeping peacefully. He thought of Emily, who used to do the same, holding Ethan through rough nights, telling stories about the sea. He realized Olivia wasn't just filling the role of a caregiver. She was bringing a part of Emily back in her way. "I was wrong to try to control everything," he said in a low voice. "I thought that was how to protect Ethan, but maybe I just made him feel alone." Olivia shook her head. "You didn't make him feel alone, Mr. Whitaker. You were protecting him the only way you knew how. But now, maybe you can try something different, being present like you were tonight." The storm outside gradually quieted, leaving only the soft sound of rain. James looked at Olivia, the feeling stirring in him stronger than ever. He wanted to say something, but the fear of loss held him back. Instead, he stood up, gently laid Ethan on the pillow, and turned to Olivia. "Get some rest. I'll stay with Ethan tonight." Olivia nodded and left the room, though her eyes revealed a flicker of emotion. As she stepped into the hallway, Clara was waiting, smiling discreetly. "Miss Thompson, you've just helped Mr. James do what Mrs. Emily always hoped for, to be a father truly," she said. James turned off the surveillance cameras inside the room for the first time since they were installed. He realized that some things had to be felt with the heart, not seen through a screen. Outside, the moonlight pierced through the clouds, shining over the Whitaker garden like a quiet promise of brighter days ahead. The storm had passed, but the following days brought a new kind of trial to the Whitaker estate. Although Ethan had survived his respiratory crisis Thanks to the efforts of Olivia Thompson and James Whitaker, he began to show signs of a pulmonary infection, a dangerous complication of cystic fibrosis. One morning, as Olivia checked his breathing, she noticed a mild fever and an increased heart rate. His oxygen saturation had dropped to 90%, and after consulting Dr. Reynolds, she urged James to take Ethan to Boston Children's Hospital immediately. In the emergency room, Ethan lay pale on the hospital bed, an oxygen mask covering half his face. Olivia stood by his side, adjusting the IV lines and jotting down his vitals, her eyes never leaving him. She had seen her sister, Maya, in moments like this, and every time, the fear of loss would rise like a wave. But she stayed calm, guiding Ethan to breathe slowly through the mask. "Captain," she whispered, stroking his hand. "We're on a safe ship now, okay?" Ethan gave a faint nod, his blue eyes searching hers for comfort. James stood at the hospital window, constantly calling pulmonary specialists, his voice strained with anxiety. He had lost Emily on a rainy day like this, and now the fear of losing Ethan nearly broke him. But every time he looked at Olivia caring for his son, he felt a strength he did not possess, an unwavering love and resolve she poured into every breath Ethan took. After 3 long days of antibiotics and intensive respiratory therapy, Ethan began to stabilize, though both James and Olivia were utterly drained. On the 3rd night, with Ethan asleep under mild sedation, James found Olivia in the hospital cafeteria. She sat alone, hands wrapped around a cold cup of coffee, eyes tired, but still burning with quiet determination. James sat across from her, his gray suit wrinkled, eyes filled with conflicted emotion. "Miss Thompson." "Olivia," he began, his voice low. "You haven't left Ethan's side once. I don't know how to thank you." Olivia offered a faint smile and shook her head. "I'm just doing my job, Mr. Whitaker. Ethan is a special boy. I can't walk away from him." She paused, her gaze momentarily clouded. "The last time Maya had a pulmonary infection, I went home to rest for one night. The next morning, she was gone. I won't make that mistake again." James looked at her, heart aching. He understood her pain. He too carried guilt for Emily's death. Slowly, he reached across the table and took her hand, startling them both. "You're not alone this time," he said, voice rough. "You have me, and Ethan has us." Olivia withdrew her hand, her expression flickering. "Mr. Whitaker, I'm here for Ethan. We shouldn't—" She didn't finish, but James understood. She was trying to maintain boundaries, not just professionally, but to protect herself from love and loss all over again. James took a deep breath, stood up, and then, to Olivia's shock, knelt beside the table. "Olivia, I know this is wild," he said, voice trembling yet steady. "But you didn't just save Ethan. You saved me. You brought warmth back into our home. Light I thought was gone forever. I don't want to live another day without you. Marry me, Olivia. Not for Ethan. For me. Because I love you." Olivia covered her mouth, eyes filling with tears. People around them began to notice, but James didn't care. From his pocket, he pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a sapphire ring, deep ocean blue, encircled by diamonds that shimmered like stars. "Ethan helped me choose it," he said with a soft, aching smile. "He said it had to be the color of the ocean, because that's where you belong." Olivia shook her head, her voice barely above a whisper. "James, I can't. Ethan lost his mother. If I step in and then leave, it'll break him. I can't risk that." James held her hand again, his gaze burning with truth. "Ethan needs you, and he knows it. When he woke this morning, He told me his mom, Emily, wants us to be happy. He said you have a heart as big as the ocean. And I like that, Olivia. I'm terrified of losing you, but I'm even more afraid of never loving you at all. She looked down at the ring, then at James. Memories of Maya flooded her mind. She had sworn never to love that deeply again. But Ethan and James had quietly broken that vow. She thought of Ethan's smile, the way he called her captain, and James's eyes, full of love and sorrow. "Does Ethan know about this?" she asked, voice shaking. James nodded gently. "He's the one who told me to stop hesitating and propose. He said his mom wouldn't be mad if we were happy." Olivia laughed softly through her tears, a sound filled with both pain and joy. She looked again at the ring, then at the man asking for her heart. Inside, her soul wavered between fear and the whisper of hope. "I need time," she said softly. "Not because I don't feel anything, but because I need to be sure this is right. For Ethan." James rose, placing the ring box gently into her hand. "I'll wait, Olivia, as long as it takes." He touched her cheek tenderly, then returned to Ethan's room, leaving her alone with a storm of emotions. Back in the hospital room, Ethan opened his eyes to find James by his side. "Did you propose to Miss Olivia yet?" he asked, weak but playful. James smiled, brushing the boy's hair. "I did, son, but she needs time." Ethan nodded, eyes glowing faintly. "She'll say yes, Dad. I saw Mom in a dream. She told Olivia is our lighthouse." James pulled Ethan into a gentle hug, hope swelling in his chest. Out in the hallway, Olivia stood still, the sapphire ring glinting under the fluorescent hospital light. She thought of Maya, Ethan, James, and wondered if her heart could be brave enough to love again. The storm had passed, but another one, of love and possibility, was beginning inside her. After 3 grueling days battling a lung infection, Ethan was discharged and returned to the Whitaker estate on a crisp November morning. Pale sunlight filtered through the garden, glinting off the pot of blue pirate, the plant Ethan had been tending with Olivia Thompson. Though weak, the boy smiled brightly as Olivia wheeled him into the grand foyer. James Whitaker stood at the door, embracing his son, his eyes filled with gratitude. And something else. The surprise proposal in the hospital cafeteria still lingered unspoken, and though Olivia hadn't answered, her presence in the house had become quietly indispensable. Wearing her sea blue sweater and curls tied back, Olivia passionately cared for Ethan. She checked the humidifier, ensured his antibiotic doses were on schedule, and guided him through gentle breathing exercises. "Captain," she said with a wink, "today we're going for a shallow dive, okay?" Ethan giggled, his blue eyes sparkling. "Dear Miss Olivia, I want to make a video about whales for my friends. I promised Tommy." Olivia smiled and promised to help once he was feeling stronger. In his study, James read the latest medical report from Dr. Reynolds. Ethan had overcome the infection, but the risk of relapse loomed large, a harsh truth of cystic fibrosis. His thoughts turned to Olivia. She hadn't left Ethan's side in the hospital, and his proposal was still hanging between them like a held breath. He knew she was wrestling with the fear of loss, but he also believed their love could stand against the shadows of the past. To prove it, he decided to do something he had long avoided: honor Emily, the wife he had loved and lost. That afternoon, James called Olivia and Ethan to Emily's old room, a space he had kept locked since her passing. The room, painted soft ocean blue and lined with shelves of seashells, still held Emily's spirit. A photo of her laughing on the beach hung on the wall, her blue eyes, just like Ethan's, shining in the sunlight. James took a deep breath and opened the door. He said, I want us to do this together. His voice low. Ethan needs to know his mother. And I want you, Olivia, to know her too. Olivia stepped in, her eyes full of reverence. She touched a seashell on the shelf, feeling the woman's presence who had left such a deep mark on this family. Ethan, in his wheelchair, looked up at the photo. She was so pretty, he whispered. Dad, did she tell stories about seashells? James knelt beside him, his eyes softer than Olivia had ever seen. She loved collecting them, he said gently. Each one had a story. This one, he picked up a pale pink shell, was from the day she first felt you move. We were at the beach. She said you were dancing like a little ocean explorer in her belly. Ethan grinned and reached for Olivia's hand. Do you like seashells, Miss Olivia? I do, Captain, she replied, glancing at James. And your mom would be happy to see us here, sharing these stories. James retrieved one of Emily's old journals from the shelf and handed it to Olivia. Would you read a page? He asked softly. Olivia opened it, flipping to an entry written while Emily was pregnant. Today, the baby kicked so hard your dad said you'd be a swimmer, she read, her voice warm. But I know you'll be an explorer because your heart is as big as the ocean. Ethan listened, eyes misty but smiling. Olivia suggested turning the room into a memory space where Ethan could come whenever he missed his mother. She said we could keep her treasures, add Ethan's drawings, and create new stories too. James nodded, deeply moved. It's a beautiful idea. Ethan, what would you like to add? The boy thought for a moment. I want to paint a family picture. Dad, me, Miss Olivia, and Mom in the sky, watching us. He looked at Olivia, mischief in his eyes. You're staying. I saw Dad propose to you in the hospital. Olivia laughed, blushing. You're very observant, Captain, she said, glancing at James. He smiled, hope flickering in his gaze. Ethan, Miss Olivia's still thinking, but I hope she'll say yes. From the doorway, Clara watched silently, a gentle smile on her face. Miss Thompson, you've done something remarkable, she whispered. Mr. James hasn't been this open since Mrs. Emily passed. Olivia nodded, emotion clouding her gaze. She thought of Maya, who had always urged her to find happiness, and wondered if this was where she truly belonged. Together, the three began transforming the room, hanging Ethan's whale painting beside Emily's photo, placing seashells into a glass case, and adding a small shelf for her journals. James found an old picture of Emily and a baby Ethan at the beach, both beaming. He handed it to Olivia. She would have liked you, he said, voice husky. Emily always believed love meant freedom, not possession. You're helping me understand that. Olivia held the photo, bonding with the woman she had never met who shaped everything in this home. I want to honor her, James, she said, calling him by name for the first time without formality, not by replacing her, but by continuing the love she left behind. By late afternoon, Ethan was exhausted. Olivia wheeled him back to his room, singing a lullaby about the sea, one Maya used to hum. James followed, eyes never leaving her. When Ethan was asleep, James took Olivia's hand in the hallway. Thank you for everything, he said. And I'm still waiting for your answer. Olivia smiled, her heart pounding. I'm getting closer to it, James, she said softly. Today was a big step. She walked away, leaving James with hope, and, for the first time in years, a feeling of truly living again. Inside the memory room, moonlight poured through the window, making Emily's seashells shimmer, like a quiet blessing for a family rediscovering their light. The wedding of James Whitaker and Olivia Thompson took place on a crisp January morning in the winter garden of the Whitaker estate. transformed into a shimmering seascape. White and soft blue flowers, echoing ocean waves, interlaced with delicate string lights, create an elegant and intimate setting. Snow fell gently outside, dusting the grounds in silver, while warmth and hope filled the air inside the glass house. Now stronger after his lung infection, Ethan stood beside his father in a tiny tuxedo, his ocean blue eyes glowing with excitement. In her former room, now a makeshift bridal suite, Olivia prepared with Clara's help. Her simple ivory gown, embroidered with patterns reminiscent of waves, hugged her silhouette, accentuating her natural curls and warm brown eyes. Clara, fastening a delicate veil, smiled tearfully. "You look like a mermaid, Miss Thompson," she said softly. "Mrs. Emily would be so proud." Olivia touched the pearl necklace James had gifted her, the same one Emily wore on her wedding day. A handwritten note had accompanied it. "Olivia, these pearls were shaped through time and trial, just like our love. Today, they are yours, not to replace, but to continue. I love you. James." Her eyes welled up, but Clara handed her a tissue just in time to save her makeup. Ethan entered with a small box in hand. "Dad said to give this to you," he said, offering it to Olivia. Inside was a seashell-shaped hair clip glimmering in the light. Olivia smiled, pulling Ethan into a hug. She said, "You're the best captain ever, Ethan," clipping it into her hair. He whispered, "I dreamed about Mom last night. She said you're the lighthouse for Dad and me." In the winter garden, James stood by the officiant, visibly nervous. He clenched his hands in his tailored black suit, golden hair neatly combed, afraid it might all be a dream. When the music began, a soft melody evoking ocean waves instead of a traditional march, all eyes turned as Olivia stepped out. She held a bouquet of white blooms, her dress sparkling under the glass ceiling. James's heart skipped as he saw the pearls around her neck, a quiet sign she had embraced his love and Emily's memory. The ceremony began with vows that were simple, but deeply heartfelt. James looked at Olivia, voice trembling. "Olivia, you brought light back into my life, into Ethan's life. I promise to love you, to protect you, and to dance with you in the rain when life gets hard. I'll carry Emily's love in my heart and build a future of stars and waves with you." Tears shimmered in Olivia's eyes as she replied, "James, you and Ethan gave me a home. I promise to love you both, to honor the past, and to create new stories together. I promise always to remember that love defies time." Then Ethan, standing between them, suddenly chimed in, making everyone laugh. "I promise to be the best kid ever," he exclaimed, holding up the ring box. "I'll keep the love for Mom in the sky and for Miss Olivia right here." He handed Olivia a sapphire ring and gave James a simple gold band, his eyes sparkling joyfully. As the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, snow began to fall lightly again. James and Olivia smiled at each other. "Looks like someone wants us to dance in the snow," James said, taking her hand. A soft jazz tune played, and guests, from Clara to Ethan's friends joining via video call, gathered on the dance floor. Even Ethan, though still recovering, twirled joyfully with Olivia, his laughter like music. The reception occurred in the main hall, where tables were adorned with seashells and sea blue candles. Ethan sat between James and Olivia, pointing through the window. "Look, a rainbow!" he exclaimed. A faint arc shimmered in the snowy sky. 7 colors. "Just like 7 kinds of love," Ethan said in awe. "Red is Mom's love, still with us. Orange is Dad's. Yellow is mine. Green is for nature. Blue is Miss Olivia's. Indigo is love coming. And violet is the love we haven't met yet." James and Olivia exchanged tearful glances, moved by the boy's wonder. "You're right, Captain," Olivia said, hugging him. "Love has many colors, and they're all beautiful." Under the table, James gently held her hand, his heart feeling whole for the first time in years. After the guests had gone that night, the three stood on the balcony, watching the snowfall. James wrapped his arms around Olivia from behind, Ethan between them, holding the family portrait he had drawn. James, Olivia, Ethan, and Emily shining above in golden light. "The picture's complete now," Ethan said, smiling. James kissed Olivia's hair and whispered, "Thank you for making our family whole." Olivia leaned into him, thinking of Maya and Emily, two women who had led her to this moment. In her heart, she felt them smiling, blessing the new family. Once a fortress of grief, the Whitaker estate was now a home, where love, old and new, lived in harmony. Outside, the snow continued to fall, but within, the light of love glowed softly, like a lighthouse guiding them through every storm.